If you go in there and you say, nothing's going to go wrong,
I have no tolerance for failure.
You're lying. And if you're not lying, you're just naive. Most new disruptive, innovative initiatives are better served by not having the brand attached to it in the beginning. If I see an interesting startup and I want the team, I want the tech, I want their users, one or some mixture of all three of those, what is the best way for my company to get involved with that tech startup? On really, truly disruptive innovation, there are a variety of legal considerations that the board is going to be very interested in and need to be taken very seriously. So, one of the first ones is, or one of the general themes is, what is the blowback to my existing business, to my existing brand? And what kind of jeopardy am I putting the existing enterprise in if something goes wrong? Which, by the way, something will go wrong. And that's, I think, how you should approach this conversation. If you go in there and you say, nothing's going to go wrong,
I have no tolerance for failure.
You're lying.
Right.
And if you're not lying, you're just naive. So something's going to go wrong. The key is, how do you minimize risk?
Right.
And how do you approach things in an iterative manner, but put appropriate safeguards in place to hedge that risk? And so one of the things on the branding side is, does this need to be fully branded right away? And I think the answer actually is no. And I actually think most new disruptive, innovative initiatives are better served by not having the brand attached to it in the beginning.
Too early. Yeah.
It's too early. The moment that you attach the brand to it, the general counsel and the legal department are going to be all over this thing, and they're going to start clamping down on you for exactly these reasons. So if you need separation, we've spoken about it literally till I'm blue in the face on this show, that you need separation from the core business to be successful from any new disruptive, risky business model initiative, particularly in the early stages. So how do you get that brand separation? Simple. Just don't use the brand. Eventually, there's other ways to use the brand. It could be like, if you have a separate marketplace initiative, right? It could be like new marketplace initiative powered by Macy's or something like that.
They're
right?
a partner or a major seller on your marketplace.
We've seen Grainger have a completely separate brand for Zorro.
Right.
They're like pseudo marketplace for industrial supplies, right? Or we've seen Walmart have Walmart Marketplace too early, which is why it failed also for this reason.
Right. And it didn't succeed until they basically had Jet, this separate business, grow. And then they bought that and kind of digested it.
Other considerations, it depends on, it depends a lot on, are you going to build everything from scratch or not? Assuming you're not going to build everything from scratch and you're going to look externally to plug some gaps. How do you ensure that the traditional business's IP is protected? Get that one all the time. Me personally, I'm not as concerned about that, but certainly that's going to come up. And there are a variety of ways that you can solve for that and be prepared for that. But then I think, some of the more interesting stuff, which is a mixture of kind of like legal structure and ownership and rights, it's kind of like deal structure, is why, if I see an interesting startup and I want the team, I want the tech, I want their users, one or some mixture of all three of those, what is the best way for my company to get involved with that tech startup? And that is where I think it gets really interesting. And that's where I think you can view these legal considerations as typically kind of being a hindrance, as opposed to now being actually a huge help and enabler for you to be successful, right? How can you bring the legal department in on this and get them to work with you, right? How can you get them to be creative? Where you say, hey, I want to go get involved with this company, but I would actually love to not even have it be publicized. And I would actually love to just have a path to go buy the company outright after we do little tests. And if it works, then I want to buy them. But I don't really want anyone to know that I want to buy them until the test actually works. How do we solve for that? And that's going to depend on a variety of things. That's going to also depend on what the cap table of that startup looks like. What does their existing operating agreement look like in that business? Every one of these things is very particular, and there's a lot of moving parts on this. But figuring out those kinds of details and having it be in a way that can, again, mitigate the risk for the traditional business until the traditional business can gain enough confidence to really go all in on it.
What I would call kind of press release, innovation by press release.
Yeah.
Where you want to make a big announcement and say, oh, we're doing this. Here, the approach is we think this is a big and strategically important bet. So we're going to go and figure it out. And only once we're ready to show our hand to the market, then do we put our name behind it publicly and this kind of thing. Not, oh, we're trying this out, so let's tell people so we look good.
Then there's obviously a lot of tax considerations why you see, corporate venture units set up in certain ways, and then they do their investments out of that. There's procedural reasons why they do their investments out of those units as opposed to, directly from the kind of operating entity. And there's all these kinds of things. But I think materially, in terms of how do you solve for disruptive innovation? How can you use these legal considerations to your advantage to minimize risks to the core business so the core business can get enough confidence to really go all in on it? Like what Walmart did, saying we're just going to do an outright acquisition with the Jet.com, right? There's a huge there's a huge middle ground from going full on acquisition for billions of dollars to how do I go prove this, show that it's working, get some traction, get the board on board, and then really spend a bunch of money in a very public way. And if it fails, if I'm the CEO, I'm out of a job. So there's a lot of different ways to solve for that. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.